Okay, I was born July 1st, 1928, in Mankato, Minnesota. My dad, I guess, had worked for the railroad, and he got laid off after 12 years. And then, anyway, they lived in the house, and they lost their house, so they moved into a house in Mankato here, and they rented it for $5 a month. That was the rent, can you imagine it? But my mother worked part-time, like she cleaned offices and things like that. I remember that. And you don't ask many questions, when you grow up, you just keep it small. And we were poor. And then, what else was it? Let's see. I guess everything started to change when World War II broke out. But I didn't think any of that either because I'm just, you're young, you don't pay attention to that.
What was it like to live through the Depression?
I mean, there's a lot of things. Somebody just brought this up the other day. This gal grew up in Kansas and used to have dust storms down there in the 30s. It was real dry. And I can remember it was very dry through those years, and I can't remember much about them, really. I had fun, played, just like any other kid. I mean, by the time I got to high school, there was more aware of things, and World War II had started, and that was a big topic, and everybody had jobs, and because I know a lot of relatives moved to California to work in the shipyards. Otherwise, like my grandpa was a farmer on both sides of the family, and my grandpa on my dad's side, he came over from Germany back in the say 1890s or something like that. My dad, in fact, was born in Germany, and they all were Germans. And they moved to some place in Iowa, and they what am I trying to say? Anyway, what I'm trying to say here, he was sponsored by his father-in-law. His father-in-law was in Minnesota, and they lived in Iowa for about, I don't know how many years, and say early 1900s, he moved to Minnesota, bought a farm, and after World War I, he sold that farm, was able to move to town, and I didn't realize that time. I just thought he was always old, but he must have moved off the farm already when he was about 50 years old, and he lived. Can you imagine that? But everybody lived so simple back in those days. Entirely different. You made everything yourself. Raised all your crops, raised all your chickens and eggs and things like that. But that isn't anything about the war. Okay.
But it's interesting.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
So did you have any family that served in World War II?
My brother, oldest brother. And then he volunteered. He wasn't doing very well in high school, say back in about 1943, and so he just enlisted. And that was when there's we were four brothers in the family. I was my oldest brother. I was second. We all served in the service. We all four of us. With the other three during the Korean War, in Vietnam War. I had one brother that was in high school. First, he joined the Navy Reserve, and then when he got out of that, when he got out of high school, he went out to the East Coast and was there for 3 years in the Navy. Then he come back home, and this is when the Vietnam War was going pretty strong already, or the start of it anyway. And he joined the Air Force, and he spent 20-some years in the Air Force.
This is a younger brother?
Yeah, the youngest. My other brother was in the Navy for 4 years.
How many siblings do you have?
Just four, three siblings, four of us.
When were you drafted?
I was drafted. I knew it was coming. I had worked that summer, and then they had notified me that I was going to be drafted. And then I was drafted in November of 1950. And went down to the local post office down there where the draft board was there, and you met down there. And then I tell you the truth, I was thinking this the other day. I think they they were still what trains were in then, passenger train. Mankato was a big passenger thing. I think we took the train, there were about maybe 20 of us. We walked over to the downtown depot, and then we put us on the train. We got off Minneapolis, and right there was Milwaukee Road Station, the railroad station. And all those federal buildings right across the street, so they just marched us out of there and over to the federal building and induct us in the Army.
And where did you go for training?
Fort Riley, Kansas. See, another thing, the train station was right there, so when by the end of the day, they took us back across the street and put us on a railroad train and shipped us down to Kansas.
Did you train with people that you already knew?
No. I knew, well, they were all from Minnesota, you know, because they're all, but they were from all over the whole state. I think there was one person I knew, that I never was with him again, and he went in a different units for training.
So what was the transition to military life like?
Well, for one thing, you know, they didn't have enough clothes for us. I didn't have for the first week I had to wear my own civilian clothes because there was a shortage of clothing, Army clothing. Then they finally got us, you know, I went down in a pair of dress pants, I had to wear them for a week. I can remember that. But otherwise, it was, I don't know, you just, you know, in the barracks, old wooden barracks. They were all built during World War II. And they didn't have any, I was on the second floor, and they didn't have any insulation in the walls. There were just the studs in the wall, like a house. And that's every Army building was in all through the Korean War never had any insides to it. It was just anyway, you got to get, you've been warned about this, you know, they fly you out really in the morning in the dark and it was winter time and the cold and the call roll, and then you have to go back in and make your bed and stuff, and you have to learn how to do that.
So what was the date that you were drafted?
It was sometime in November of 1950.
Did you do any kind of specialized training, or?
No, you just take the regular, you know, okay, on all my orders, I looked in back here, it said pipeline. As soon as we went, we were on the pipeline for Korea, all us guys. And you take your regular basic training, you know, 13 weeks, crawl around on the ground and crawl, and learn how to fire all the weapons. And you had to learn how to take them apart and clean them. They called that field stripping. And things like that, and just march and obstacle course, or the obstacle course, I don't know what they call them. You have to crawl over walls and swing on ropes and what else? What's the other course that sticks in my mind? Way up, they fire over your head with guns when you have to crawl on the ground. Although I can't remember what they call that anymore though. Right now, I thought it was real scary at the time, but it wasn't. If you kept down, you didn't ever get. Anyway, no. You don't get. It was around Christmas time, and I remember there was no leave. And we had to go what they call on guard duty for over the Christmas holidays or something like that. Stay and march around the post or something like that. I guess whatever. I don't want to talk about that stuff anyway. That's all old hat for everybody. Everybody went to service that time. They went through the same thing, you know, the same basic training. And after that, if you ever had some kind of a specialty, sometimes they pulled you out and put you to a different school. Otherwise, after 13 weeks, I just went, got, was it 30 days leave? I don't know. Maybe 2 weeks leave, went home, and then I went overseas.
So when did you head over to Korea?
Okay. Well, that's kind of an interesting trip. That's the first time I ever took a long train ride. We went on our own. We got in the train in Minneapolis and went to Fort Lawson, Seattle, Washington. Anyway, I spent about a week there getting ready to. Oh, they issued all your clothes, any clothes you never had before. They needed to admit you were short. And you got a full uniform. And then got on board ship, and that was scary. There's old troop system back days. They aren't nothing like the modern day cruisers. You know, they were what, about 100 feet wide and about 300 feet long, and it took us 18 days to get over there. Ran into bad weather. They locked you down below the decks, and the ship would just bounce up and down and come crashing down, and there's on the walls, the water would run down the walls. I was scared. I think everybody else was. I was in the bottom compartment, D compartment, they called it. And yeah. Oh, I was thinking about that now. Another neat thing, we finally got into Yokohama. And early morning, they got us out on deck. And it was the prettiest sight ever seen. It was just, this had to be like about maybe the last part of April, early May of 1951. And there was a big Shinto temple on the hillside up there, and it was all bright and nice and bright. And out in the water was all these little boats bobbing around. The Japanese were fishing out there. They were all over. And it's the first time I've ever seen them. And they had Japanese crewmen get on the, on the ship. And they were only little guys. They were only about that high. No wonder we beat them in World War II. They had smoked and chattered. I couldn't understand anything they said, but whatever. That stood up in my mind.
So how long were you in Japan before shipping over to Korea?
About 3 days. I mean, 1 day, okay. See, went to Camp Drake, Japan. That was an old former Japanese army camp. And I think we were only there about, how about like 2 days only. But then you know what they did there? Took all our clothing away. Just down to the basics, no dress uniform, just to say, I think you had 2 pair of fatigues, and stuff like that, and maybe 2 or 3 pair of socks. We stood out in this courtyard, this big place, and they would list an item of clothing. You had us take it and throw it into the pile in the middle. By the time we got through the pile of clothing out, I don't know. Anyway, we crossed Japan on a train because we were on the eastern side, and we crossed over to the western side. I can't remember what they call it now, but and that's where went past Mount Fuji. Remember that? That's a big that big peak over there. And along the way, we took the train across, and they're all along the way. They're at every intersection where the people would be standing, and they expect us to throw stuff out to them, like cigarettes or candy or what. The civilians, they were poor, very poor. In fact, what Japan was for, Korea was terrible, and everybody had even Korea and Japan both, in the area I was in, was all just mud huts with rice straw roofs. And that's just the way it was.
So where did you arrive when you got to Korea?
And they call it a different name now. It's Busan, the southern part of Korea. Everybody you cross from the eastern side of Japan, western side of Japan to overnight on a Japanese ferry boat, and then in Korea was terrible. It was just the whole town. There was nothing there. It was just all rusty, and they put us on the train out of there. We went so far north, I don't know how far, and then we had to get out in March. You just can't believe it. That whole dock area was just old, rusty, shabby pieces of metal. I have no idea if they were used or what. And then they put us on a train. The train didn't have any windows in it. And we went, where did we stay on that? We went north. I think it took us all night. And then we'd go through food tunnels, and smoke. I was in the car right behind the engine, and that was those steam engines. Yet the smoke would come pouring in the windows, and I forgot most of the stuff I did. Anyway, and then we got off the train that day. I'm not sure of the times, but the next day we got off that train, and then we had to march down this road. And the roads over there where part of Korea went were just, they weren't very wide, and they had big boulders in them. There was no, except for the Americans or the UN troops everything else was just very rural, and everybody carried they had A-frames that carried the stuff in the back with. If you see a picture of an A-frame, and actually, part of the country I was in wasn't very farmy country. It was all kind of more hilly, very hilly.
Where were you stationed?
I wasn't stationed any place. In a rifle company, I was assigned. Okay, we arrived. We got to a replacement center, and that was just a bunch of tents stuck on the hillside. And I think they kind of trained us there for a couple of days, and then we got assigned to our units. And we had at that time, everything was in transition, because it was in the start of the second spring offensive. We had got pushed way back, to be a little slow at that time, and they were coming back. And there was, and I was assigned to a rifle company. And it's hard to describe this, no one understands. In a rifle company, there's like I was in Charlie Company, that was Company C. And there's Charlie forward and Charlie rear. They put me up there as Charlie rear, and that's just like there's a sergeant and a company clerk back there. They're all intense, and just the supplies people in the kitchen. And otherwise, I think I stayed overnight there. Then the next day they shipped me up front. They didn't wait till. They were going to take. They had a jeep with a trailer. They were going to take the supplies up for the day, and they they said get ready to go. When I got ready to go, and it was starting to get dark. This was in May, and they finally said, "Okay, we're going." And there was three of us went up beside the jeep driver, and then these other two guys. One guy had been sick. And he had yellow jaundice, and he had to go back up. I bet he was real thrilled about that. And I can't remember what the other one had been wounded, and they sitting back up again up front. Anyway, we went down this road, and it's starting to get darker, and you see fires. Everything's area of Curia, and everything's hills, very small valleys, and. There would be flames burning up there, fire on that side, and you see a figure running. You didn't know if that was an enemy or what. I didn't know. No one said anything. We kept going. All of a sudden, we stopped, and there was I don't know if it was I think it was a British tank battalion, and they had run over some woman. These are a bunch of tanks. Tanks are big, and it was getting real dark then. And they said, I remember the guy saying that just smashed her, flat. Then we kept going, and all of a sudden it got so dark, they didn't have no lights, and even the Jeeps don't have any. They just have little blackout lights on them, and the guy said he wouldn't go any farther. I had to get out and walk. He had come back the next day to bring up the supplies. So we started out walking, and they had to walk up I don't know how far. It's hard to say. But we finally joined the company, and because I wasn't assigned anything, I just stayed with what the company commander, they call it the CP, the command post, and there was and then he needed another radio operator. It was somebody that had a strong back. He had 38-pound radios and had something to carry the radio. I mean, compared to communication nowadays, it was just like I just had a can with a wire on it because radios didn't carry very far. It was all hilly.
So you carried the radio?
Yeah. All the time I was over there. I mean, not just I know they're moving anyway, but whatever.
So can you tell me more about what your time online looked like?
What?
What your time online, what was it like?
Okay, let's see. I don't know if it was the next day or the day after. We took off the next day, and then we were walking. And then sometime, if it was that day, the first day I was there, the second day, they said we were going to Spearhead. And I didn't know what that meant, but it's what they had. We were going to get in the back of these tanks and just and it was, I don't even know what was going on. We did spearhead. I burnt my hands and I blistered my hands and knees trying to get in the back of the tank because I was carrying that 38-pound radio and my other supplies. And then there was we were going through flatter country then, but there was no enemy around or nothing around. It's hard to think back. Anyway, we got to near some river, and you had to cross this railroad bridge to get to and we finally sat up on this hill overlooking the river and stayed there a few days. And there had to be some place near they talk about the 38th parallel, okay? About the second or third or fourth day, we crossed the 38th. There's a little stone thing there. I'm probably getting confused in times, but all the time I was there, I never was actually in South Korea, I was in North Korea. We were always north of the 38th parallel. Hilly country, mountainous country. Lived like pigs, dogs. All we ever ate was sea rations and little cans and stuff.
Are there any specific stories or experiences that really stand out to you from that time?
We were in an outpost overlooking Kumsong Valley, and that was one platoon of our company was on that outpost, and they got hit real hard that night. But that isn't variable, so it shouldn't be any difference. But I was lucky; I was in that hill next to it, and we had to go over there the next day and rescue them, and they hauled the dead out and wounded out, and see, they didn't have any kind of modern thing even back in those days. There were helicopters over there, but they couldn't get close. Everything was so hilly, and there was no landing pads. And then poor guys got wounded. Say about midnight or so that night, they laid there till when we maybe got over there about as soon as daylight next morning. Then they had to haul them out and haul them way back to another long valley to where they had could get jeeps up there, and then they hauled them way in there.
So you were on the next hill over. Could you see anything? Was there sight lines between the hills?
There would be it was sight lines, but it's hard. Everything's so tree over there. It's hard to say. I wasn't on that side of the hill anyway. I wasn't going to peak. But it's hard, if you were at a hill here and a hill here, maybe ours a little higher, and they got hit real hard here, and there's this big valley between them and between us, and we didn't get anything.
What kind of friendships or camaraderie did you build during your time?
None. That's 60 years ago. Everybody was from all over, and actually, because I was with the CP group, the command post, the company commander, and the other radio man, and the artillery forward observer was with us too. We are kind of separated from the rest, but I never really, maybe for a few years I kept in contact. Nobody ever was within that company I was in, but otherwise, no. We'd pass more over.
What exactly unit were you in?
What?
What unit were you in?
I was in, okay, how about Company C, 21st Infantry Regiment, 24th Infantry Division. And that's whatever.
And did your unit move around a lot, or were you pretty stationary?
Well, at that time the war was getting, we had, the UN had armies, the U.S. armies, whatever you want to call it, had pushed back, retaking their old positions, where they'd been around the 38th parallel. And there was starting to be talk of peace. And we would be on line, and then and then they'd pull us off line, back in what they called reserve, and just kind of rest and relax and do a little training, and then they put you back on line. About every I can't remember what, but we'd make these attacks, attack the enemy someplace out there, you know, just kind of push them off their hills and stuff, the Chinese. And we did that about 2 or 3 times. When I first got over there, I said we had crossed the 38 and stuff like that. Well, that one day we were attacking this hill, and they got held up, and they called for artillery support, and their artillery was backed up in all their missions, so they didn't fire right away. Not big guns, you know, and then we got hit real bad by old friendly fire. Guys injured and laying all over, eyes hanging out, and that sticks up in my mind very much so. We didn't have enough. They had to cut down tree branches and make litters. They call them litters. They were stretchers, you know, haul people back down off the hill. And that's the first time I ever seen any dead enemy soldiers where then they shelled that area. They must have fought over that area once before, because they're dead people laying out on the ground. They're all kind of withered away and stuff like that. Skeletons. See, a lot of the country over there had been fought over 2 or 3 times, just in that first year. But otherwise, what do you want to say? No one ever really understands what's that like anyway.
Where were you when the war ended?
I was back home. See, the war didn't end till I have no idea when. I was going home.
Did you rotate home?
Well, I see that as a rotate. Yeah, I guess you call that rotation. Yeah. I had another. I guess I told you this before. I had another interesting experience where we left. They pulled us off the line, and our division was placed with another division, the 40th Division out of California, National Guard Division. And they put us all on those big convoy ships and shipped us back to Japan. And I was in Japan more than 2 or 3 weeks and got sent home. I think that was like, I have no idea when. Okay. What was interesting in the camp, we shipped to, way in northern Japan, and the city was next to the city of Sendai. Well, I was there about 2 or 3 weeks before we went home, I think. And I thought it was a barren country. I didn't know that it was set in the ocean. See, that's where they had that big typhoon here just 2 or 3 years ago. Or when it wasn't typhoon, what do they call that? The tidal wave that hit? Yeah.
The one that hit the power plants?
Yeah. I was in that country. I met one other guy over the years that was there too at the same time, and he said, we never knew there was an ocean there. We were right in the ocean. I couldn't see it.
When were you discharged?
Oh, I came back August of 1950. I got out after only 19 months, or 21 months. There at that time, once the Army threw it there, the service, they just want to get rid of you. I didn't know what to do. You come back. Next, I came back here, and then I was in Colorado, and I got discharged out of Fort Carson, Colorado.
And then what did you do after that?
Probably nothing for the first year, and I went back to school then. It's odd jobs, I went back in the GIB, I went back to school.
And what did you do after school?
I mean, after I got out of school? Oh. I never did graduate. I don't know why. I can't remember anymore. But I did. Actually, the big thing after most of my life, I was with the post office here locally in Mankato. And I spent 30 years there and stuff like that. And I was just inside. Mankato was always a distribution center for the other area towns or something like that. And I never carried mail. I wasn't a mailman or whatever.
What kind of life lessons do you feel like you learned from your military service?
Oh, I don't know. It was exciting. It was nothing. Life lessons. Hey, I'm 86 years old. I have no idea. It was part of your life. But when you went in, everybody was a draft. Everybody was required to go. And I think everybody did. In fact, where I grew up, I don't think anybody who I grew up with ever. I think everyone was in the service of some sort, Army, Navy, Air Force. I don't know, just you did.